So hello and welcome to Talking Hats. I'm Montague Squiggles. This is...
I'm old man Wolfy.
Yeah, he's very old. Don't worry. We all know it.
Yes.
There's gray in the mustache.
Yes, it's gray in the mustache. The temples are gray. The hair is gray too. It's more salt than pepper these days.
He's more salt than pepper these days.
It comes with the territory.
But what are we?
Let's see. We are a show discussing fandom in its various forms and various
Both terrifying and beautiful.
Yeah.
Probably more terrifying.
The pros and the cons, the good and the bad, and sometimes the weird, the strange, which...
And
a lot of but generally, our show is going to be basically discussing aspects of fandom, experiences in fandom. I have a lot more experience than he does. I think I
got old.
Yeah, I went to my first convention when he was 2 years old. So, yeah, it's like I've been around.
Just a tad more experience than I.
Yeah, it's like terrifying. But our experiences of having seen conventions, science fiction, fandom, fantasy, books, and all of the things come over this, 20 years plus.
You expect anything from fiction, movie rants, furries, weeaboos.
Discussion of conventions, convention changing. We will delve occasionally into the neo-political or the neo-social aspects of fandom and where it's gone and where it's come from and how much better it is and how much worse it is.
And having been on both sides of the convention counter, as it were,
running conventions,
Wolfy a little more than I, so it should be interesting.
It's my fault that he actually has worked conventions.
Yep, he can take all the blame. I'll just point them in his direction. It's like, oh, I'm innocent. It's all him.
But yeah, it's like I've been doing conventions since about 1987 was my first regional convention up in New York, and that was an experience that was, at the time, was one of the greatest experiences of my life. It opened up so many doors.
You were so naive.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that back then it was
back then everyone was naive, I think.
I had to actually go and check with some people going what order of conventions I had done, what I had done in what order, because part of it was, I'm like, did I do these conventions first? Yeah, I did. I must have, because I didn't do the conventions until that first convention. So that was when I first found my first science fiction club in high school.
Science fiction club, which I barely saw when I was in school. I don't think you see that kind of thing anymore. You might see it rolled into something else, the occasion, but nothing where we're here for science fiction, maybe fantasy literature, not movies, not comics.
And
literature.
Nowadays, the literature
that thing
aspect
that they put on your iPad that don't even have to print it anymore.
Yeah, the general consensus was that after about the time when the information age came out, the whole concept of clubs and organizations kind of took a hit. Didn't go away because it's still
kind of exploded, then imploded, and then fizzled a little bit. But it's pushing back out, but it's not exploding. It's in this weird normalizing state where you have a lot of groups that are either absolute trash, go nowhere, or the moment you step in, it smells so strong, or the awkward is so thick that you back right the hell back out.
Yep. So, but the thing is that I've been in and out of various and sundry forms of fandom. I mean, I've done the anime thing, I've done the medieval recreation thing, I've been a con chair, I've been a con attendee, I've been on staff, I have gone to
worked booth with them.
I've worked booth. I've worked booth with I've worked. I shelled for Utilikilt. I shelled for Storm Constantine. I've done. I've been to what Comic-Con spawned from the creation conventions. It's basically Comic-Con format.
And I've been to the Comic-Con that was before, the one that people remember fondly. Not just the one that people remember, the one that's remembered fondly. Because I grew up in San Diego, so I literally a couple years was able to day trip it to Comic-Con before it became, the corporate monster that it is today.
Exactly.
And I kind of wish that I was at least self-aware enough more to have appreciated it more than I did.
Right.
But I hadn't really come into my own as far as a geek kind of fan crazy by then. It took another several years until after I ended up in this area.
Well, the thing is that when I did my first con, that was part of and that will be, we'll of course elaborate on some of the stuff when we do we're going to do an entire episode devoted to conventions and convention experiences.
Put the sequel hook in there somewhere.
Exactly. But the thing is that, I did my first convention in 87, but that year we had been part of the science fiction club. We had, we did LunaCon, and then there was like the creation cons, and it was like the ever-growing bunch of friends, of the gaggle of friends, that we all were like, this was basically our lives, that we would basically, everything was lived from experience from con to con, or experience to experience. And the other thing that's interesting about my experiences then was that for some strange reason I took in a lot more than just the, wow, there are people here. I started to look at the nitty-gritty of how things were run, how things didn't run, what went right, what went horribly, horribly wrong. I saw the corporate conventions, like the creation cons and stuff like that, for what they were.
And it's not that they're a bad thing. It's, I don't know.
They don't have a place. The problem is they don't have a place anymore, because with the advent of, Amazon, you don't have it's much harder.
I don't think it's that they don't have a place, is that they're not adapting.
Right.
Small cons have to, just to survive in general, regardless of whatever else is going on. These corporate cons don't really, so it's going to bite them in the ass eventually.
Eventually it has to. When we used to go to creation cons, the problem was that it was a 2-day con, and it was, the idea was it was just dealer's room and some guests, and that's all you need to be at a con. But even back then, it was just weird, because even as a teenager, this has got to be, I figure I was like maybe 17, 18 years old at the time, and you start going, that's a lot of money to spend to go see a guest or two, maybe, if you're lucky, and then spend a whole bunch of money in the dealer's room, if you're lucky, if you have the money.
Also, I'm sure plenty of people did when they didn't have the money.
This is back when you could get, like, grade A stars autographs for the free. Here, come sign my thing, and they will sign it for free. So yeah, there's a whole when we have the whole discussion about conventions themselves.
We'll probably talk about each different part of it in the long run. It's too much for one.
But what was weird was, like, when I got to high school. Up until I got to high school, I had like a couple of friends. We had a couple of friends who were into science fiction, or they liked role playing games and D&D.
Everyone had their little circle.
And everyone had their little circle. My circle was like all 4 people, so my circle was tiny, and I was a super nerdy, big ass glasses.
Playing Cyberpunk and Vampire in the halls of high school.
Oh no, that was college. And
that was college.
That
kind of gives you less of an excuse, because it was college.
The thing about well, we played Cyberpunk in high school, admittedly, yes. But the thing about it was that was pre-high school. When I got to high school, I was still a nerdy kid, until one of my friends got me into metal, and then I went punk, which is
arguably not much different.
But the thing is that we also that was when again. In high school, that was the explosion. That was when I met the grandeur. When I saw the veil was lifted, and I saw the greater world that was fandom. And then I looked too long into the void, and the next veil was lifted, and I saw what fandom actually could. I saw the other uglier side of fandom, and you looking back on it now, I'm amazed that I didn't strangle more people when I was younger. I'm also amazed at some of the stuff. The sheer arrogance of myself and the teenage me, coupled with the fact that teenage me could probably have still done a better job at some of the stuff that I saw. Than
just makes you want to go back, shake your head, and go, "Oh, sweet, sweet summer child."
Sweet summer child. You had no idea what. If you could, it's like maybe the Game of Thrones approach of taking lop off people's heads would probably have made a better experience for a lot of people for several decades.
Yeah.
But in general, I have under my belt 30 years of fandom experience, roughly. It's like I've been a fan since about between 13 and 15 years old, depending on where you want to start.
Yeah.
And you've been...
it's like so you have a lot of fandom history that doesn't really exist anymore.
Oh my god!
Which gives an interesting perspective on what's going on now.
Yeah, it's like fandom has changed. Fandom is changing, and
fandom is ever changing. I don't think it's ever stayed exactly the same. There are individuals, there are groups that yes.
Oh yeah,
and I'm sure we'll get to that. But it's like overall, as a cultural thing, it's never been the same thing for any long extended period of time.
Right.
And it's gotten those periods have gotten shorter and shorter and shorter as information just made things happen quicker and quicker.
Exactly. So you've got.
I mean, even when I started, it's like the internet was in its infancy. There were places to go, but still, you couldn't just drop in somewhere and find your people. You had to search for it really hard.
And the perspective that it's kind of lost on this generation. I mean, this generation of fandom doesn't seem to have the perspective to understand that, you don't know how much better you have it than you think you did, and you also don't know what you've lost in the process. One of the problems with fandom is that it tends to eat their elders.
They must absorb their power and grow stronger.
And unfortunately, the problem is that some of the elders, the problem.
Some of the elders are poison.
Yeah, some of the elders are poison, and nobody wants to eat them. And I kind of wish someone would eat them so that they get out of the pool. Although the pool is probably the last time they had a shower.
If you're lucky.
If we will. Yeah, that will probably. We'll have to do an entire episode.
We have all these. Oh, we'll talk about this. Oh, we'll talk about that. But
we'll have to have an entire episode devoted to nothing but discussing the fandom tropes, because.
You see them all over. They'll pop up on your Facebook, and I assure you that most of them are completely true. If anything, they're not going far enough. They're actually undershowing it. It's like, no, it's like that. It's like this, but it's more.
Yeah, more. You have no idea.
And we've run into a few shows that are actually going through. Oh yes, here's the more, and we'll get to that because it's wildly uncomfortable.
Yeah, and sometimes it's a little closer to home than I think any of us like. But one of the plans, we have plans. One of our plans is to do a video log, or maybe some live streaming from Dragon Con this year. So that's going to be the big goal. Everything we're working towards that.
Right.
Because Dragon Con is our big.
I don't know how well we'll be able to live stream.
Yeah, to the internet. No,
there's but 70,000 nerds
trying to access the internet at the same time.
Yeah, I don't know that it'll work all that well.
We might be able to upload a video or two during the con, but I think everything will probably happen after the fact. They'll give you the post-mortem on the actual event.
Although you should look for us if you're going to Dragon Con, because
you're right.
We'll be the
rightly
pie hatter.
Yeah, you got the pie hatter. It's like I've got to give out my annual doses of Dragon Con pie. So
look for us. We will have our hats.
Yeah,
we always have our hats.
Some variant thereof. It's either this hat. I mean, I'm always wearing a hat at Dragon Con. It's like I feel naked without it.
That's for the after party.
Yeah, exactly. It is Dragon Con. We just want to, we have a lot of our opinions and a lot of our one more voice in the sea of fandom that is currently out there. It's just funny because so many of the voices that you see talking about stuff are people who are like, oh look, I'm a whole whopping 30. I'm 30 years old. I'm a knowledgeable elder of fandom, and I'm like,
no. See, if they were saying 30, I wouldn't feel so bad. It's the ones that are like, I'm 22 and I've seen it all.
I've seen it all. I'm going, no, you haven't.
No.
You only wish you had seen half. You only wish you could forget half the shit I've seen. The general, we're going to try and make this a regular, super regular. There's going to be an entire series. I'm going to have my own entire series devoted to me basically exorcising the demons of the one convention that I was most involved with, that I was chair of, which was the glorious part of the otherwise unending torment that was.
I never get old of hearing the stories.
Oh my goodness!
The con that shall not be named for now.
It's like it's literally like one of those Sisyphus things where you're pushing the rock up. They were pushing the rock uphill, and everyone else was tap dancing on the rock trying to bring it down.
No, it's more like that Christmas episode for Futurama, where they're trying to shut the cover on the fireplace, and Bender's like, "Oh, we're supposed to be pulling," and then they close it. That's what it was like. Everyone else is trying to close this thing, and all the ones are like fighting against it, thinking they're doing the right thing.
Yep, and then
and then Mecha Santa blows everybody up.
But it also comes up with the fact of like what old fandom is like versus what new fandom is like, and we need to discuss the.
But that's not even like specifically a fandom thing. It's like the way you do it. Is you have the old generation, you have the new generation. It's like there's always that kind of friction.
There's always an old guard that does not want anybody to. There's funny. Ironically, there's an old guard that doesn't want anyone to change the things that are there. Then there's the young people who don't understand how anything works, who insist on that they know exactly how everything works. And if either one of these if either one of these factions gets into power, an explosion happens. It can be either horribly dull or mind-blowingly awesome disaster in passing. Ball pits. Ball pits. Just like, I have never...
I shouldn't feel so good about that, because it really was kind of a horrible thing to happen to a lot of people. But I cannot deny just how incredibly
satisfying
it all is.
It's like, it felt satisfying, though, that it blew up in just such a purely Tumblr way.
It was perfect.
It was exactly what it was. And
we will probably go into the details on what it's like. Right now, we just want you to get to know us, know where we're coming from, know what we're going about.
Mm-hmm.
He's the one that's been around forever in fandom, since dinosaurs ruled the world.
Yeah, I might have killed a couple of them, so give me my hunting spear. The general consensus of what I've been doing this for so long. I've been part of fandom. I've been watching fandom. You pay attention to the shifts, the kind of tectonic shifts of how fandom moves. And people talk about things like, they want everything done yesterday, but they also don't understand how fast things have changed already.
Blink and something's changed.
And people just can't seem to wrap their heads around how ridiculously malleable fandom is in the moment. It literally goes along. It serpentines all over the place.
In a lot of cases, it's not even just that people aren't willing or able to change. It's that change is happening so much people don't have enough time to react to the change.
People can't adapt fast enough, and a lot of times, part of it is the fact that fandom's changing in ways that nobody really anticipated
or expected.
And then the realities of what those changes meant or mean or are meaning are starting to sink in now, and it's only now that people are starting to parse out what has happened.
Yeah.
Because fandom is not anything like it was before. Fandom has, as I said, better and worse.
Yeah, it wouldn't survive if it was the same way. It just wouldn't survive.
And sometimes it may not survive because of, if fandom destroys itself, it's its own worst enemy sometimes.
It never will.
One can only hope.
Fandom will always be around. Now, you might have a fandom old fandom consumed by new fandom take its place, but you will always have fandom. What that is, that's the kickers. Like, what is this?
Right, and that's going to be it's going to be interesting discussing that, where we've come from, how things used to be, how things will be, how things are going to inevitably be, and sometimes that's for the best, and sometimes it's not always. The process isn't always it's not always an adaptive process that's good. Just because something changes doesn't make it a good change. And some of the changes are really, really, really necessary. Oh my god! But some of the changes are just inadvertent, and it's just a matter of because fandom isn't what it was, and also because fandom isn't as insular as it used to be.
Which is good. For all the bad that gives us, the fact that fandom is not as insular is so much better.
Yes. And then you realize that it's not always better, but it's so much better on the whole. In the end, when you tally everything out, yes, it's better.
When everything's balanced out, it's for the better.
Yeah, it's up until that point, however. But for now, I think we can leave this off for now, and we'll be back with probably our first one. Will probably be discussing conventions, the actual convention experience, and how
be a good lead-in to what we're trying to do for Dragon Con. And
yes, oh my god.
really, conventions are still where you go to be a fan.
There where fandom actually, that's where you get to immerse yourself in fandom. So that's going to be its own discussion. That's for a discussion for another time.
Probably several.
Yeah, we're going to have to have at least a couple of episodes about different aspects of conventions and convention experiences and what makes them different.
If you can have 3 anime cons and they still fill entirely different purposes.
That's true. So, okay, for now we're going to sign off. I'm Old Man Wolfy.
I am Montague Squiggles, and we'll see you next time.